Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello and welcome to Marketing Management, a VUCA perspective. We are discussing core concepts and we are now at module number 3. I am your friend and guide on this entire lovely, amazing, immersive journey, Siddhiprad Bhattacharya. We've been discussing segmentation and targeting so far, and now we come to the third part of the STP framework, which is positioning. Now, positioning typically lands you in a space where you try and posture. You posture yourself in front of your customers. You want to be perceived in a certain specific way, and hence you expect them to see you as an organization, as a brand, in a certain specific light. But for that, what you need to understand is the customer or the consumer themselves, and you need to be where they are. You need to meet them halfway. You need to go where they're supposed to be and interact with them. They won't come to you. You have to create the paved roads for the two of you to meet. As was said by Al Ries, one very famous American marketer and consulting guru, that don't push people to be where you want them to be. You meet them where they are, and that actually creates more decisive dependability on you as a brand who can be trusted by the consumer, who can be believed in, and who they will bank upon in their moment of need. This is critically important because at the end of the day, it's like creating a friendship, or in even better words, like a romance. You court the other person. You bring them to a space where they feel safe, where they feel trustworthy, and where they feel that they are being taken care of. And you are the one who are in their attendance, who are in their service. So, with that particular premise, let's delve deeper into why this is so important, because at the end of the day, the customer will turn around and provide you with their trust, with the value in terms of monetary gains that you're going to gain out of that entire transaction and series of transactions if you're lucky to win their trust as well. So hence, connecting with the consumer's mindset is critically important. Connecting is at the very, very core of all things marketing. So connecting is where you will actually make space for the consumer and be able to bring them to your side of the thinking. But first, you must reach exactly where they are. You map the consumer's universe and make an identifiable and entrenched space within that particular universe. And you look at really the heart of any positioning exercise. So this is core to understand the subject of positioning. So, which brings us to today's topic. You're trying to build value, and that you do for the consumer by positioning and create a viable consumer proposition. Because at the end of the day, your proposition will merit whether they will come on board or not. So, ensuring consumers see you distinctly, what you stand for, because you have to stand apart. You have to be that one shining beacon in a dark sky. You have to be that knight in shining armor who saves the damsel from distress. You have to be that friend, that shoulder who one can rely upon and cry upon. You have to be that pillow which soaks night's tears. You have to be that person who takes them to see places and have fun and enjoy. You have to be that 3 o'clock in the night friend who stands with them no matter what. So, as a brand, you must exude these personalities. And in a competitive marketplace, businesses must differentiate, because if you do not stand apart from the others, if you don't showcase that you are not like everybody else, then your offerings will not stand out. And without that, you will not be able to gain the trust and faith of your prospects. Once you are able to do that, only then will they turn into being your customers. They'll pay for the product and service that you have on offer. And your differentiation capabilities, they involve identifying unique attributes that set up your company's products or services, which should be something different from what everybody else, your competitors, are providing in the market. This is a process. It is a step-by-step evolution of what your offerings are, and it requires a deep understanding of who the consumer is, what they need, what industry trends are going on as of now, and as a company, as an organization, as a brand, what are your strengths? How are you able to do what nobody else is? And that is precisely the mix from which you have to approach the entire subject at hand. A well-crafted value proposition communicates the specific benefits that a product delivers. It highlights why it is the best choice, and it gives it directly to the target customers. It does not waste time with other people who may or may not be interested. It specifically addresses the target customers, says this is absolutely made for you. This is why we are going to give you the value nobody else is offering, and why it is the best choice compared to anything and everything that is available in the market. It will have functional aspects, it will have psychological aspects, and definitely monetary value. What I pay for and what I get should actually, in my mind, sign off as some sort of a monetary value. This ensures that customers perceive greater benefits than the costs that they are ending up paying for that particular product or service. Your market positioning further will refine this strategy by defining how a brand is perceived in comparison to whoever else is out there. They may also have their own positionings, but how does yours stand apart? How well do you understand your consumer, and how well are you able to adapt to those specific needs, to those specific fears, to those specific desires that they have exhibited? By doing effective positioning as an exercise, you leverage a company's unique strengths, create a compelling brand identity, and with that compelling brand identity, you stand apart from the competition. You align your differentiation, your value proposition, and your positioning, and by doing so, you can foster customer loyalty because you are different from the others. You do things in your way which has not been replicated by anybody else. Your value proposition provides more value than the cost at which the product or service is being given, and the positioning is such that people trust you, they find you bankable, they will side with you at any given moment. This will help drive customer loyalty, it will help drive sales, and establish a long-term success in the industry. You don't want to just have one transaction with your end customer. You want them to keep coming back to you. Also, you want them to get more of their own kind back with them so that you have more and more customers. So this is precisely the entire process. And in this process, you have to be both analytical as well as creative. You have to analyze all the points of data that you find, and creatively speaking, you have to come up with out of the box solutions, things that weren't expected, things that not just surprise, but they also delight the customer. And this requires ongoing adaptation, and you have to evolve the consumer's preferences and market dynamics, bring them into the picture, and ensuring you're on top of the game throughout. So this is how you ensure that you are distinct and you stand apart so in front of your customers. So in order to understand the positioning part of STP, we are going to look at developing a value proposition and then how to go about creating a positioning strategy. Now, why is brand differentiation so important? Companies cannot win by offering undifferentiated products because then they stop being products and they become commodities. Now, try and understand this, that commodities are like everyday goods which you must have. They will be a definite need. They will in fact be necessities. But You can't tell one apart from the other. It's like rice or pulses or vegetables. You have to be then the sole judge, and there is no differentiable point. So you will look at the item, you will ask for the price, and you will see that the price is amenable. You will go and buy it. That is how commodities function. But products are typically evolved offerings, and therefore, by that evolution, it means a little more of the individual. The customer's expectations have been met in the deciding of how the product will be put in front of them. Also, what factors, what features have been built in, so that the features and factors which have been built in become part of the decision making process for the customer, and they enrich the experience of buying that particular product. So, strategic brand management ensures that these offerings stand out in consumers' minds. They take note of what you have said, how you have said it, with whom have you shared this information, and how much value it brings to them. Example here is T-Mobile's distinct value proposition. T-Mobile stood apart from the other AT&T and Verizon providers in its day by getting right to the needs of the customers. They got handsets in place which were the delight of the customers, and they created that particular profile where they got the necessary pricing right and the plans right, which ended up giving them a foothold in the telecom space. They were established in the US in 2004 as Deutsche Telekom subsidiary, but they fought against the large players which were already entrenched, AT&T and Verizon, very large organizations, very corporate, very business-like, and they called themselves the uncarrier. So automatically they became the most unlike telecom or telephony carrier brand that they could possibly get. They became more human. They decided that we will look at it from the consumer's perspective, and this they did through innovative services and customer-centric policies. Both of these things actually helped them stand apart and be noticed by customers, because nobody was talking their point of view. Till then, AT&T and Verizon were just putting out services, and people had to buy them because they needed to be connected. But nobody was really listening to what the customer wanted on the ground level. And that is precisely where T-Mobile actually managed to create a dent. So they got into a lot of stuff. They didn't do any long-term contracts, and so therefore that meant that there was transparent pricing. Why am I charging you for a certain service? This is why. So those answers were clearly given. People ended up understanding why they were being charged at a certain point. And there were easy smartphone upgrades because people liked to flaunt their smartphones. That was one part of the entire aspirational value which people had. And there were no global roaming charges. So you could just buy and forget about having to put up a roaming pack when you traveled. This instantly became a hit because customers wanted to use the phone and go anywhere on business or leisure. And this was very, very supportive from T-Mobile's side, because at the end of the day, nobody had to think twice. They didn't have to actually bother about doing this as a piece again, and also, ensure that before they left, they got the roaming packs in place. The carrier took care of the needs of the customer, and that is how it became very, very helpful for them. Also, there was free Wi-Fi calling and video streaming, which brought costs down and ensured that people got the best experience that they could have possibly hoped or dreamt of. This helped them create a certain nuance of being friendly towards the customer needs, and that was backed up by the technology. So strong investment in setting up a network so that calls were done reliably and no drops, or at best the least amount of drops were being aimed at. And their superior customer service ensured that the customer did not feel left out at sea. They were always tended to, their needs answered, their requirements always met. All of these things were helpful in keeping the customers front and center in whatever activities that T-Mobile used to do with them or for them. And at the same point in time, they were also attacking the large ones out there. So they had a competitive attack on AT&T. Now, AT&T clearly overcharged due to their iPhone exclusivity. They had the iPhone, they were offering the iPhone, they were offering themselves positioned as only for the top-notch players. So that premium positioning is what AT&T stuck with. T-Mobile, in fact, targeted 4 key differentiators in order to set them apart. They were talking about technological innovations, so they were talking about the best gadgets, the best products, and the best technology in terms of the telephony support. They actually talked about low transparent pricing so that people knew exactly what they paid and why they paid that particular amount. They were very, very fabulous when it came to customer service, and it also spoke very directly to millennials. Why millennials? Millennials were important because of 2 factors. One, they were the ones who were most invested in technology right here, right now. At that point in time, when T-Mobile actually pushed out their carrier services in front of the millennials picked it up because of them being invested in technology, and the other part was that they were very approachable and affordable. Both these things worked in their favor. Also, one very important factor which T-Mobile thought of was the lifetime value of the customer. Now, AT&T was selling overcharged, overpriced plans to people who were pretty old in life to have arrived at that particular point where owning the iPhone was nice and the exclusivity around it was as well. Whereas millennials were at a point in time which would have helped them grow in their lives and careers, and with the tech support and with the best gadgets and products at hand, they would have grown with the brand, and that is precisely what happened with T-Mobile. That is how millennials over their lifetime have stuck with the particular carrier and been happier for it. Now, all of these things together formed the reason why T-Mobile's market growth met unprecedented levels. Now, first and foremost, they were very smart about going about doing whatever they were doing. They, in fact, in 2020, they merged with another provider, Sprint. Why was this required? See, you can fight a lone battle, you can keep chipping away at market share wherever you enter the market at. But at the end of the day, this was extremely important because with a simple merger, instantly you are expanding and doubling up the market coverage that you have. Now, they were very clearly with minimum overlap, the markets that they had covered. So, T-Mobile's market coverage and Sprint's market coverage were two different, very, very distinct geographies, distinct kind of audiences, etc. Together, the entire coverage which Sprint and T-Mobile had, this expanded their customer base by about 75%. And therefore, automatically with 100 million plus customers, they became the second largest US carrier for wireless services, and pretty much happened overnight. The moment the merger was announced, this is the thing that actually got them a couple of levels above where they were previously. Now, the lesson to be learned here is that unique brand positioning drives long-term success because you've set yourself apart as a consumer-facing, helpful and friendly brand, and you have taken that particular brand identity and worked better than what your major competition is currently doing. All of these factors together helped T-Mobile rise up the ladder. They got their numbers right, they got that M&A going with Sprint and captured a larger market share very, very instantly. So, this is specifically both in terms of managing the business as well as the marketing activities around it, which helped them craft a better stand and grow in the stature within the US wireless carrier market. Now, how does all of this dovetail into a value proposition? When you're crafting a value proposition as an organization, there are lots of factors that you need to think of. The first thing that you need to understand here is customer needs. Customer needs are central to any and every organization's not only growth but also its sustenance and its longevity. Why is this so important? Because customer needs keep shifting and changing. there is evolution, and there is technological adoptions. So today, instead of typing out a query on Google, you may want to use voice search. You can use voice search with a variety of AI assistants that are available in homes or even on your phone nowadays. You can use OK Google, or you can use Siri, or you can use Alexa, and a couple of more which are doing the rounds. And you can, through them, actually push out the kind of search that you want answers to. Now, customer needs going back a decade would have meant that people are typing away at a laptop. Then the mobile phone appeared, and on its screen you would twiddle your thumbs. Now it is all voice enabled. The evolution of technology is also shifting the way people consume technology, and all of these together form trends. So organizations need to understand customer needs and also map it to trends which are ruling the roost in the marketplace. Once you're done with that, you also need to figure out who you're speaking with. Now, yes, the needs are definitely there. Needs reach a vast variety of people. But having said that, who will you get your business from? That precise audience is something that you have to factor in. And targeting that right audience makes all the difference when it comes to deriving value out of that transaction, because you're providing your services. If they are most likely to pick up on you and your services, then the value created for whatever they've picked up will be the most profitable for you with the least amount of effort. And therefore, here you have to provide a clear value proposition. How? A variety of things will have to be built into the value proposition. You will have to tell them, for the price that we are offering, we are giving you more value than what you already are expecting from that particular purchase. So our value supersedes the cost. And not only that, we also add more factors like our service, like our dedication, the quality of product or service, and what have you. All of these things together form a clear value proposition for the end customer. And when you're posturing yourself in front of them, here you need to have strong posturing and strong positioning, therefore, and you are looking at creating a customer satisfaction and repeat business format, so that people keep coming back and they keep buying from you from their entire shelf life as customers. Now, just in order to understand this first point of customer needs, we need to look into how customers actually choose what they are going to buy. Here, you will see that customers maximize their value based on certain few things. They look first and foremost for cost, whether it fits my budget, my expectation of how much I intend to pay for a specific product or service, and then the knowledge that I have of either the scenario or that particular brand or that particular product from the brand or service for that matter, how much of it is something that I know, and therefore I can make a discerning decision as a consumer. And the kind of mobility that it provides me. Does it free me up from doing whatever I was doing? Now I can focus on things that I want to focus on, rather than having to be a serf to exactly what the technological needs of that are. So for example, if I were typing out, I'm spending more time typing. But if I can now dictate, I just speak, and like in the earlier days, a stenographer would take down notes in shorthand of whatever has been spoken, then type them out. AI tends to do that nowadays. It takes that dictation and formulates it back into text. Yes, currently AI is still in its infancy, and hence it cannot decode the human speech aspects so well, but going further it is learning. So once it learns enough, it will be able to understand all nuances, accents and various glitches in human speech, and still be able to decode what it is being said, and probably try and be also able to do a job where mixed language speaking is brought into play. For example, English, where Hindi and English are both being spoken in a same sentence. The AI at a point of time and training should be able to make sense of what has been said, give the output in English, or it can do a differentiation and give output in either Hindi or English separately as well. So that adds to the mobility. And also understand what are the key constraints, for example, income. Now, all of these things bring customers to a choice, and these constraints stop them from probably dropping into that particular decision well. But if the value is such that there is a high perceived value and you can build urgency around it, it will automatically mean increased sales and loyalty, because the brand, the way it has showcased itself, gives an urgency call to the end consumer who thinks, if I miss out on this opportunity at this price point, I will not be able to buy the brand again. Hence, they scrounge, but they manage the monies to pay for that particular brand. Now, there are three typical dimensions of value, because this is critical to understand so that we are able to craft better value propositions. The first part is functional value. Now, what does functional value mean? Functional means that whatever that particular product or service was designed for, is it true to that particular core purpose? If it is an insurance, is it going to cover the money required after some sort of claim has been made? If it is a car, it has to ensure that it takes you from point A to point B with a certain amount of fuel infusion. If it is a burger, then it is supposed to give you two things. It is supposed to fill your stomach, and at the same point in time, you're supposed to have a very nice taste. So these are the examples of functional value that can be built in. Here you will see there is performance aspects, there is reliability aspects and usability aspects of that particular product or service which people look forward to. If they are first time tryouts, then they will have these factors less, but as people more engage with that particular product or brand or service, they will increase the expectations when it comes to the performance, the reliability of that particular brand or product or service, and how well can they use it, so usability. The next part is psychological value. Now, when we talk about psychological value, what do we mean? We mean to say whether using that particular brand or product or service gives the customer a sense of psychological relief. Is it emotionally tuned into the consumer psyche? Does it define what social status that particular individual therefore enjoys now that they have bought into the brand or product or service? And the kind of self-expression that they can now enjoy once they have it. So, for example, Budweiser had a whole "What's up" campaign. No, that expression of "What's up," the way it was done with that very robotic voice and the tongue hanging out was part of culture from the Americas, where typically men would greet each other with that kind of an intoned greeting. Now, then the entire conversation was based on whether you are conforming to that particular code of men meeting each other. They would typically meet over a beer, and that gesture of being friendly and completely nonchalant about their interaction and having just a beer in hand was something which people looked forward to, and it instantly connected with the entire audience set, and that helped people define themselves as part of a brotherly club of bud drinkers. This is something which formulates itself in the self-expression part of things. Again, social status wise, do you feel the need to be part of a group where you are able to stand together or stand apart of? And here in this case, with the Budweiser example, you are standing as part of a group of men who loved hanging out together with a beer in hand. So that gave you that social status of being part of that club. Emotionally, it helped them unwind. So all of these examples gave you that particular psychological value which was expected. Now, in terms of monetary value, pricing, obviously, there is nothing second to that. And if there is a sense of a win which the consumer feels, that is something they get from sales and discounts, where they get the same product which they had saved up for at a lower price, and therefore they find it more valuable. And there are certain financial rewards also, like you've got points which you accrue over time and you can redeem them. So those other monetary value pieces also start coming and becoming a part of the entire decision making chain. Now, when we talk about the customer value proposition, the total amount of customer value is the benefit that they derive or benefits, and it takes away from there the costs that they have incurred. So companies can enhance the value by increasing the functional, psychological or monetary benefits, thereby allowing them to feel that they have got more benefits and actually ended up spending less for it. And that is what the next part is. It reduces the associated costs. So you have to go somewhere to buy it. Maybe you reduce that cost by making it available online. Maybe you have to sift through a variety of things. So the time required for that again is something which, if you have an organized platform, whether on phone or laptop, you can allow people to try things out beforehand. Magic mirror technology helps people try dresses and accessories on even before they go to the cash checkout for that particular product in various stores. Now you can do the same thing online as well, and this gives you that particular ability to save your time, save your heartbreak by getting things tried out and then finally repenting or having buyer's remorse for it. So all of these associated costs are reduced, and that helps drive a certain value in the proposition. Now, we can take an example of Volvo's value proposition. Now, in the case of Volvo's proposition, first and foremost, the core positioning is that of safety. When you speak of safety when it comes to automotive brands, Volvo's name features right up top. What are the added benefits that Volvo actually speaks of here? They speak of performance, because it has a lot of stamina. Any Volvo automobile, whether it be a car or a truck or a bus or what have you, they are built to outperform everything else. Beyond this, they also have great design. So ergonomically, they are well made to sit inside, enjoy plush comforts, etc. And there is a certain eco-friendliness. So you don't feel bad about it because it also is environmentally aligned. And all of these things help you feel better about making a purchase with Volvo, whether you're directly purchasing it or whether you're using its services through an intermediary. The value delivery system ensures that the customer trusts that particular brand absolutely. So now customer value also needs to be analyzed in a variety of steps so that they are able to get to the decision making point. So here, first and foremost, you identify attributes of customer value, assess the importance of these attributes, compare company versus competitor performance, you monitor the value over time, and you adapt so that you are able to reach a particular point where the value obviously overshoots the kind of costs that are associated in getting that particular product or service. So how do you keep building that customer value? To gain a competitive edge, you try and increase the total customer benefit. So you give them a better product, whether better looking, better sturdiness, better stamina, better design, or give them the benefit of buying into a brand like shoes, running shoes, Nike, Adidas. These are brands which you can close your eyes and trust with, because they provide all these necessary various things around that particular product which make it completely believable. And at the end, there are services. So services actually help you ensure that whatever you bought in, you do not end up being remorseful about it. And you reduce the total customer cost. You reduce the price itself, you make it easy to use, and you give them warranties so that people can actually use that particular product or service with confidence. Now, all of this finally boils into how you will shape the positioning strategy for your particular product or brand. Now, what is positioning by definition? It is designing a company's offering and image to occupy a distinctive place in consumers' minds. You have to come across as an identifiable, easily relatable but unique standpoint identity which people connect with, because your end consumer needs to definitely, you may stand out, but is it something necessarily that the end audience readily connects with? You have to ensure it happens that way. And once you are connecting with at as a consumer level, that is typically the image that you want to leave behind, and so they keep refreshingly using that connect to come back to you and give you that lifetime value. So here the objective is to maximize brand recognition and consumer preference. Over time, they will want to keep coming back and trust you for your products and services. And the key focus here is highlighting the essential benefits that you can derive out of that entire transaction that set the brand apart. Whatever the design, whatever the build, the form factor, the elements which have been used, the kind of warranties that you've provided for that particular brand of product or service, all of these things start becoming part of the dependability which comes, and that is showcased in the positioning strategy. Now, why is positioning so important, you might ask? Now, it clarifies what is the essence of the brand. What does the brand feel it is, and how does it want to project itself in front of you, and what value as a consumer you will get in case you should choose to take up that particular brand. Here, it also guides the marketing strategy and the decision making process of the consumer. The more you are able to affect the decision making of the consumer positively, the better are your chances of growing and creating a dent in the industry. Now, you should understand that this is something which is unique. It sets you apart from the entire organization's set, the competitors who are around you, and also any other market forces which may be clawing for the end consumer's mind. So, you need to create that positioning so that it is easy to understand and should be understood across the organization, and it appeals to both rational as well as emotional factors. So, not one thing alone can help make that decision for you. There are certain parts of the decision which are rational, which are logical, which are understandable, which relate to past data points which people have experienced and are basing their insight from. The other part to it is emotional, what you will feel. This is more future forward and looking at how you will feel and what you will feel and what will the experience be. So, this is typically stuff that has not yet happened. So, rational stuff typically looks behind that particular moment to find historical inputs to ratify, whereas emotional factors look forward and find futuristic manifestation of what your hopes and dreams and aspirations are, and reflect it back on the purchase decision right here, right now. So, in terms of timeline, if you're now, then this side is rational and this side is emotional. That's typically how the consumer's decision making process also flows, and they take inspiration from both these sides of the decision making tree. Now, in order to understand these two aspects, let's deep dive a bit more into rational and emotional positioning. Now, rational positioning has functional beliefs like quality, performance, reliability. This broadly gives the consumer or the prospect a sense of what they are going to get once they have completed their process of purchase. Whereas the emotional connection of self-esteem, lifestyle and aspirations, none of these typically find form or function at the core, but they are typically derived outcomes from having bought into and therefore future facing. Now, example, Mederma as a scar removal tube managed to shift the perception from practical messaging that, hey, I will remove your scars, to self-esteem enhancement, where they're talking about go live your life and be the best of who we are, and you don't need to be worried about having a scar, because that scar will be taken care of by the best in the business, which is Mederma in this case. Now, throughout all these pieces of conversation, there are certain case studies that we keep throwing up. Now, these case studies are intended for people who are going through these processes to understand how the entire scenario plays out in real life. And in this case also, there is a bag brand called Kate Spade. Now, Kate Spade came up as a minimalistic bag brand to a diversified fashion label, which is now what it is at, but started with bags. Why was the emphasis on bags? Because they were also focusing on style and personality. And clearly, here the most interesting person in the room would be the consumer. So, this was the emotional string which was being pulled, and it made women take notice, because bags are mostly carried by women, and the bags you see behind the lady, these bags are typically lady handbags. So, that is where the conversation really came from, and it was decided that women with these accessories and accoutrements, when they step into a public engagement space, there whatever they are wearing, however they are speaking, whatever they are thinking, all of it is reflected upon by the public at large out there, and then they are judged. So, if you are the most interesting person in the room, the accessories you carry, for example the bags, they will become a particular talk of the town, and that is typically where Kate Spade's bags positioned itself. Now, when you expand from there, you expand into apparel, you expand into jewelry, and even they go up on a digital presence. So, here you have got social media, e-commerce, and a variety of other things which they are now into. The idea behind all of these things is to understand how a particular brand positions itself in a way so that people believe that this is precisely what they stand for, and it reflects on me as a paying and buying customer. So, if I buy a Kate Spade bag and carry it, I will definitely become the most interesting person in the room when I meet a group of friends or I meet a group of colleagues. I'm in particularly any public space. I become noticeable, and women who feel the need to be noticed are the ones who will want to pick up a Kate Spade bag. So, this is the evaluation of their positioning, and you have to put something called a brand substitution test every single time you create a positioning statement, because you have to understand that whether that particular positioning bit is working for the brand or not. So, you must take another competitor or unknown brand and put them in the communication piece and remove the original brand which you have, and see how the results play out. So, if a competitor can replace your brand in marketing efforts, that automatically means your positioning is very, very weak. So, how do you ensure that you are able to do that? You shift your positioning statement to ensure that you are defensible. Example here is, would Kate Spade's positioning work for Tony Birch or Coach? Now, Coach again is a bag of brands. Tory Burch again is a fashion brand. Now, will Kate Spade's positioning work and make people the most interesting people in a common gathering space? Coach typically is high end, but it has quite a few offerings and which look fairly similar. It's just the brand name. So, hence people realize that Coach is about being pricey and important, but it does not necessarily mean that you are a different kind of cut. That interesting factor ensures that you are not seeing in the same proposition and in the same positioning space as a Kate Spade. A well positioning brand therefore should be distinct and ownable. So, distinctiveness is something which stems from differentiation, like we have discussed the past time, and ownable means that once your efforts of creating that particular category and educating the people happens, that should be something which owns its allegiance only to you as a product or brand. It cannot be taken up by any other competitor in that similar space. So, beyond this, when you are creating positioning, it is like walking a tightrope. you have to balance between the present and future aspirations. The present aspirations are based on whatever has happened in the past, whatever, like we discussed in a couple of slides before this, that the rational part of it goes back into the past and checks how they have been, whilst the emotional part actually entrenches itself in the things to come. Now, if Kate Spade had to come up and go into this particular space, the right balance in positioning is which would have been critical for Kate Spade to manage. Now, here when they are balancing between present and future aspirations, you have to ensure that you allow room for growth, because nothing is fixed. Your growth story, your narrative may need a little bit of tweaking tomorrow. If those tweakings are required and are not administered, a trend may pass you by, and more than one trend, a whole market may pass you by, and you may end up relegated to the annals of history. So you have to be flexible and allow room for growth, but you also have to stay realistic so that people can't take you for a ride. And you have to avoid being too constrained or too unattainable, because the higher you go, the number of takers automatically reduces, and it reduces very, very drastically. So these are points which you need to remember when it comes to creating the right balance in the entire act of positioning. Now, this is something which we will discuss further in the subsequent modules, and there are certain parts to this entire structured approach. The parts are things that I'll expose now, but we will discuss in the upcoming conversations. Why these are important is something I'll share. The first part is called a frame of reference. Let's say I ask you to fly a plane. Now, amongst all the people here, I don't know who exactly is a pilot. But if everybody has to fly a plane, then people need to understand what plane is the question speaking of. Is it an actual plane? Is it a jet fighter? Is it a propellered plane? Is it a glider? Is it a toy plane? Which plane do we have here is something which comes only from a frame of reference. Each frame of reference we've spoken of, whether it be a toy plane, whether it be a jet fighter, each of these have their own individual specific frames of reference. Once that frame of reference is understood, then you can identify who you have to speak with, which is the target market, and who else is trying to also speak with them, which is the set of competitors. Now, with these things in mind, you are determining points of parity and points of difference. There are at least times when you have to separate these things. Points of parity will help you understand how competition is performing around you, what all do you need to have which is similar, so that you don't fall too far away from the running group and the category and the expectations people have from it. Whereas you also at the same time create a certain set of points of difference, so that you stand apart, you have your own point of view, you are not related to what the expectations from the market alone are driving you towards. Here, parity means features that match competitors, and difference means unique aspects that set the brand apart. So, all of these considerations together, they form the entire set of steps that we need to take when we are discussing how we go about positioning. And we will discuss all these items in much more detail going in the further domains. But before we end today's conversation, we need to understand how all of this comes together and comes into play. So, the process of differentiation, this is the first thing that needs to happen. You need to stand apart from the crowd that is already there. It has already taken up that particular space. There are infighting elements which are vying for market share within that particular space. You must guard against that by creating sufficient amount of differentiation. That differentiation needs to be pointed, which is where you will get a certain amount of value. value which you will later proposition to your clients, that value is derived. So, and you create a value proposition at the end of the exercise. Your market positioning, the way you are structured, the way you talk, your demeanor, your brand identity, this helps brands establish a unique identity and attract their ideal customers. Because yes, you remember we made personas. Basis the personas, we have defined who we are. Now it's the time to ensure that whatever positioning we are taking is what they expect and what they would really appreciate also. So differentiation here, it involves identifying and leveraging unique attributes that set a brand apart from competitors. So you have to ensure that you are identifying and leveraging those specific unique attributes to do so. And this could be product quality, which is the first and most obvious. Then there is innovation, so that you are constantly seen as a brand or product which keeps innovation at its core. Then pricing, because you have thought through and are willing to provide certain amount of value at a certain price point, so that people find it worth the while to buy it. Or finally, it is emotional appeal. What here will happen is typically you will use more of the futurism to showcase what decision must happen today. Typically, the purpose will lead to the purchase. So now, once differentiation here is clear, a value proposition is crafted, articulating the key strengths that a brand offers while addressing the customer's specific needs. Once you've got all of these things in place, your positioning refines this further by defining how the brand is perceived in the market. Whatever positioning you do, you can test it out into the market, and the brand will automatically showcase how well it is performing and what people are saying about it, what are the feedback mechanisms that come into play. So together, it involves selecting a frame of reference from the target market and from competitors. Again, the frame of reference is important because you need to look at points where you are being at parity and where you are standing apart. So this currently is more focused towards making it stand out, and any amount of effective positioning, because it has to work. So that is how you will measure whether it is effective positioning. It blends rational, which is functional benefits. Then there are emotional, which are aspirational connections, and these together form the rational elements of that particular effective positioning. And then you can use exercises like brand substitution in order to test whether this works or doesn't. So you take Nike as a brand, and suddenly instead of Nike, you put in Bata, you put in Adidas, or you put in Clarks, and you see whether the same proposition works equally well with the kind of product profile that they have, with the kind of offerings that they make, with the kind of warranties that you achieve from them. All of these things taken into consideration together will ensure that through the brand substitution test, you are able to see how your brand is performing vis-a-vis anything and everything else that is available in the market. And you will actually finally realize that if a competitor should use the same messaging, then you will definitely need repositioning, because nobody wants to be seen as a copycat. So repositioning is needed so that you have your own distinct stance, and that will help you create strong positioning which balances the current market relevance with future aspirations. Definitely you have to work towards future aspirations, but market wise you have to also stay relevant so that the market recognizes what you offer and is able to find value and therefore reward you with their particular purchases as they go along. So all of these things together, they will ensure how strong or how weak your entire positioning is in front of your intended target audiences. Now we have talked about segmentation, we have talked about targeting, now we have talked about positioning, propositioning and various other things. This sort of covers the ambit of STP, segmentation, targeting and positioning. But going further, This will need to be delved into in much more detail when it comes to case studies. We will reach the case study format, but prior to that, what we have next is, before we get into the aspects of the case studies and what really happened with these brands, we need to understand that two major factors shape the flow of brands and the flow of their narratives, which is why I haven't added that part, but you can see that culture and influence, these are two things which look at anything and everything possibly as a product and infect it with whatever is happening at the grassroots levels, and that comes from whatever culture we are coming from and influences that entire activity. So this we will find in customers decision making, and it is no longer neutral without that. You have to look at the culture and influence coming in and making things change at its own discretion. So those are aspects you need to understand how culture shifts and how you are able to address those things in the coming modules. So with that, I come to a close, and it has been great speaking with you. I hope to see you next time.
Understanding oneself, understanding others, understanding society at large, understanding the nature, these are all driven by basic human curiosity. We would all love to understand why things happen, what happens, what is the final outcome, why certain things fail. These are all exercises that we perform in various domains of knowledge. Therefore, knowledge in various domains, you would realize they are actually social artifacts. They have to be rooted into historical perspective, they have to be culturally salient, and there would be socio-political reasons behind this. Whether you talk with respect to engineering sciences, whether you talk with respect to physical sciences, biological sciences, social sciences, that's the reason why humanities and social sciences should be understood by all of us. The knowledge that is segregated, that is divided with respect to areas, specializations, all of them needs to be understood in its context. And what provides the context? It is the social reality. How do you correlate knowledge in a given domain with the cultural reality, with the social reality, with the socio-political compulsions? Okay, how do you understand the law of nature, okay, in its totality? And for doing that, you require the understanding of humanities and social sciences. Say for instance, if you are trying to understand the effect of a particular bacteria, a virus, any microbe, how it affects behavior, how it affects the organism, human being, you start looking at it from a pure biological point of view. If you are trying to look at a particular type of a wavelength, say for example, you are emphasizing on the understanding of the effect of radiation on human life, you are looking at things from a physical point of view. You are looking at the corresponding changes inside the body, you are looking at the physiological side of the understanding of the information. You are trying to understand why, despite knowing the risk that is inbuilt in the process, why still human beings engage into it. You are looking at it from a pure behavioral point of view. Why society at large admire things which has full of risk. You are trying to understand things from a pure sociological point of view. Why people use particular set of words to explain those experiences. You are trying to understand things from the linguistic point of view. So, there are a whole lot of things, and then finally you try to combine all of them to say that what are the guiding principles in life. Then you say you are looking at life, you are looking at humanity from a pure philosophical point of view, and this is what social sciences courses provide you. They provide the context to you in which you would be finally positioning the understanding of the knowledge in any given domain. It could be engineering, it could be sciences, it could be medical sciences, it could be social sciences stuff, it could be humanities stuff. So, contextualizing the knowledge is what humanities social science courses help you obtain.